Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I want to be talking about decision making, basic decision making leading over to the more advanced decision making. I've brought a game that I had versus Myriad from yesterday's best of 7. We played for $150. I'm not going to spoil the result. You guys can watch that. I'll link that in the description below. But it went pretty all right, and I'll definitely show you this this one game here. We're playing Iubits versus Byzantines. We're going to talk about basic decision making leading over to the advanced decision making. And the reason I say that is because decision making is more than just picking a strategy, fast castle or aggression or second TC. It's also when to do it. When do you have a timing? When are you building up towards something, and what can you do with that advantage that you have? So what we're going to be trying to focus on with this video is when you do actually manage to succeed in some sort of aggression, what are your options? And just sort of think a little bit about where can we take these games? Because a lot of the times people, when they make decisions in their games, they think, hey, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta go castle, I gotta get relics, I gotta go imperial, and all these things. Whereas basically what you gotta do is you gotta go aggro, and then you gotta find the timing. Or you gotta go eco, and then you gotta survive until you've got some sort of economy advantage. Or you're going for something like a fast castle to try to time a defense with some gulams or whatever it is. In this game, I'm playing a very simple military wing into growth wing Iubit. There's a build on this. I can also link that in the description for you guys. Very simple. It still works nowadays. And the reason it works is because you get free units. Those free units can provide you with a lot of opportunity to delay your opponent while you get other advantages going for you. So we're just going to speed up the early game here a bit. Basically what I'm doing is I'm scouting my opponent early. I'm going very aggressive, going around their base, going for the safe sheep. So if you don't know, the sheep spawn in clusters of 2 around the map. They'll spawn around in the corners, right? They'll spawn further away from your base. And then you have these safe sheep that typically spawn around your base. So here you can see these ones that are spawning around our base here. And so what you can do with a long scouting route like this is you can go for your opponent's sheep, and then you can pretty much guarantee to get at least 5 or 6 sheep that way. If your opponent's going for the middle sheep on the map, then you can always take your scout and run it back home, and then you've gotten 2 rounds of safe sheep from both players, right? So that's a pretty good way of going about it. I would say so myself, because you guarantee yourself to have that food you need to go for a fast castle. So that's the sort of decision that I make here with my scout, in terms of my scouting route and why it is so aggressive. I don't need to go back and with my sheep because I have the berries early on. So that's an important distinction compared to other saves that do need sheep. If you're playing something like French, then if you're not going out on deer and you're staying on sheep, then you will need to get back with sheep before 3:30 or 3:15 or something, because that's when your 5 early sheep run out. Alright, so I know my opponent has a decent amount of sheep. I know I have a decent amount of sheep as well. We can always do a select all here. We have 13 sheep in total with our spawning sheep. We can see our opponent here also has a couple. So we can't really make the decision to go and play that sort of resource aggressive game that a lot of people find when they get a lot of sheep. We can definitely play fast castle, but we aren't in a situation where we can go and make a sort of off meta strategy, which would be something like aggro Iubits, because what's going to happen is our opponent has a spawn where they have berries in the back, they have deers to the side here, they have berries here, and wood in the back, gold in the back. So going for something like an aggressive play here is going to be a lot harder compared to if that was in the front. So that's already what I'm sort of thinking about here in the early stages of the game. How is this going to affect the playstyle that I'm going to go for? If I'm going to go aggro, it's going to be much harder. But if I'm going to play to my civ bonuses, play fast castle, it's fine, because I don't really need to care too much about this. All I need to care about is, did I get a lot of sheep? And I did. So this raider comes out. As I said, I played military wing into growth wing. Military wing is really good because you can deny a lot of resource gathering. You can focus your opponent on your desiderator. You can keep them in their base. You can force towers. You can force range units. There's a lot of things you can do with a free unit like this. So it's kind of like infinite value in that sense. And so even just moving villagers around like this is value, because right now they're not gathering. And villagers gather with about 30 to 40 resources per minute. Now they're not. And so he's actually losing resources just based off of this archer. So you don't need to kill villagers. That's never the goal of the desiderator. The goal is just to disrupt, to cause idle time. If you get villager kills because your opponent's slow or they don't see it, perfect, right? That's amazing. But it's never like the goal. You shouldn't be diving on the TCs for a villager kill. This is all you want. So I know now that because of the timing right now, my opponent should have about 400 or 500 oil, and we can see here with our guard vision that he does. He also has a mercenary house, and he has a barracks coming. And so what often happens in this matchup, especially at the higher level, is Ayubits will try to go fast castle. Maybe they'll go for a bit of early aggression. I don't think you should go early aggression. If you go early aggression, then you give your opponent the time they need to set up, and you're playing into their game, so to speak. Byzantines have a longer setup time, and understanding that they have a longer setup time where they are gathering oil and their longbows come out a fair bit later, which is about that 6:30 to 7-minute mark. That means that the longer time you spend in your feudal age, the more time you essentially give them to find some sort of value with that. So try not to do so. Instead, say, okay, look, they have this preset early setup time. I'm just going to go for the castle age, and then I'm going to try to time some sort of unit counter. That could be something like Gulams. So Gulams versus Camel Lancers. A lot of people don't understand this. And I've been talking about this for years, I feel like. In my coaching as well. People will... I see it in Twitch chats and stuff like, you should go Gulams, Camel Lancer together? Never. You'd never go Gulams and Camel Lancers together. You'd never go Knights and Gulams unless you have a massive economy advantage where you just got to pump out units. Instead, what you got to think about is, am I going to play Camel Lancers into archers? Or am I going to play Gulams? And Gulams can go into anything. It could be crossbow, archers, horsemen, whatever it is. Because Gulams is independent of unit compositions when it is used the way that it's used. You typically want to use Gulams as a response to someone who's doing a feudal all-in type of thing. Feudal aggression / all-in. When Byzantines are setting up something like longbows and spears, and they want to do aggression against you, that doesn't mean that they're all in, but it means that they're definitely looking to try to deny you gold. They can build one quick ram with that. They might look to go and deny you wood or food. And so what's really important to understand here is that if you go Gulams, that's going to be great for defending against it, but it's not going to scale well into the castle age. If they go into the castle age right after, and they go crossbow, your Gulams are worthless. If they go into Lancers and you don't have a lot of Gulams or spears to support those Gulams or crossbows to support those Gulams, your Gulams will suck because the Camel Lancers or Knights or Lancers will deal with it. So understanding that going Gulams here as a response to the feudal aggression that's coming out so that you can get relics, so that you can get the advantage from going castle, that's the reason that you're doing it, and not because you're trying to end the game by Gulam spamming. You're essentially trying to open up for this play, which was to really go fast castle, then saving your butt, so to speak, by going for Gulams, so you can deal with this early aggression, because if you go Camel Lancers, you're just going to die to the spears. And then from there on out, keep on building on that advantage. If your opponent keeps making units from there on out, amazing, because now your Gulams will keep gaining value, and they won't go castle. But if they go castle, we have to have a follow-up. That could be archers. Could be archers because they'll deal with the crossbows. It could also be something like spears, because the spears will deal with the enemy lancers. In that situation, crossbows might be even better because you already have a front line. So, basically the thought process is, we go Desert Raider, we get a good early advantage. The Desert Raider allows us to go Castle Age. The Castle Age, we can do different things. We can go Camel Lancer, we can go for Gulams. We need to go Gulams because our opponent's going for spears and longbows, and we need to get ranged armor with that. As a side note, what are we trying to do with our Castle Age? Well, we're trying to get an advantage. We get a 7 villager age up bonus here because we're playing as the Ayubit. We also get access to relics. We can collect them, and they are going to be infinite value as the game goes on. We're trying to open up the mid game here for us so that we potentially can go into a second town center, so we potentially can go into something like relics, like Imperial Age. We have so many things that we can do. We can play controlled, we can play map control, or we can play more timing focused. But if we play timing focused, we have to know that our opponent could go castle, and so we would need a follow-up to our Gulams. So there's a lot of thoughts that go into this, but the basic understanding is of the units that Gulams aren't going to work the moment your opponent is in Castle Age. And there you need to switch into something different. Doesn't mean you should stop making Gulams, but it means that you should have a follow-up. And that could be crossbow, archer, spear, horseman. So many of these units are good at dealing with the counters to the Gulams, which are crossbows and lancers. Alright. Hope that was not too complicated. Again, if there's any questions to this type of thinking, decision-making, always comment down in the description below. I'm always going to be doing my best to try to explain things a little bit better. And if you're more interested in personal coaching and stuff, you can always contact me on Discord. That's always free. Alright, so We are now in the Castle Age. We have secured a second gold here. We went for this gold in the front, and it was not essentially a risky play, because we already have our Gulams out, and we know our opponent is really focused on the gold over here. Always being aware of where your opponent is and what their vision is by looking at where their scout is makes a big difference here in terms of where you can go, because it's never, oh, you're going to the front, that means you're going to die, or you're going to the back, that means you're safe. It's more like, what does your opponent see? Right? Because if they only see the right side of your base and they don't know that you went to the left or into the back, then going to the front, if they don't see it, you're safe. You can go to the corner. If they don't scout it, you're safe. So, being aware of your opponent's vision matters a lot as well here. We made a blacksmith right after our double barracks here because we need the ranged armor. Our opponent has longbows with +1 ranged attack, which means our 4 ranged armor on our Gulam isn't going to be sufficient when it comes to dealing with this. And compared to normal archers, it can even be worth it to go for the +2 ranged armor. And the +2 ranged armor makes sense because longbows have 1 more damage compared to normal archers. So they will still deal good damage to Gulams. And so if we want to use these Gulams to really be annoying in this timing that we have where our opponent is in Feudal Age, then getting something like +2 ranged armor makes a lot of sense. We're going to be grabbing relics in the meantime. We're going to transition into archers because our opponent is going to go crossbows most likely. But the thing is, our opponent makes a mistake, and that is that he stays in the Feudal Age. The reason he's going to do that is because he's going to run out of food here under his TC, and he's going to be threatened enough by the Gulams that he's actually not going to go castle. So something like this play here, that essentially gives him the impression that he's going to be Gulamed all in, then he needs to make units. Otherwise, he's just going to be fully idled in his base. But in the meantime, we are building up something else in the back. We're going for stone. We're starting to take relics. We are not all in. We are playing this very methodically. We are opening up the game where we are not putting all our eggs in one basket. We're instead saying, hey, we have all these other things that we could be doing in the meantime. We could go relics. We could go into other units. We could go second town center. We could go maybe Imperial if we're that crazy. So understanding that this delay here is opening the game up for us to give us more advantages instead of just playing only to this tech advantage is such a game changer if you have not been understanding this, because understanding that you don't have to fully stick to something like an all-in from the Gulams, and you can decide to keep scaling with a second town center, that's going to make a huge difference in these games that will otherwise go into the late game because your Gulam attack sort of failed, and now you are instead going into the late game with a second town center. You have something else going for you, and having something else going for you when you're playing mid-game, well, that's what it's all about. Either you win the game like that, with the castle timing, or you keep it going. You keep it going, because a castle timing is not always going to work against good players. It might work for this purpose, which is delaying the enemy economy. Look at how many villages are idle here. Look at how much military has to be focused into these 6-7 Gulams. Whereas in the back, we got the second town center, we got the relics. We're getting 4 relics into this game. 4 relics is a lot. Every relic is worth 2 villages, and it keeps scaling with tithe binds in the Imperial Age. So if we want to play for the long game, or just prepare ourselves for a potential longer game, then getting all these advantages going for us matters a lot more than potentially just ending the game here, because that's a more risky play. And in tournaments, you don't necessarily want to play risky. Sometimes you do, but not all the time. And that's the same for ladder. Don't always play risky. Instead, if you have the potential to build a safe advantage and you see all those opportunities, go for them. Alright, that's a lot of talking. Let's get back to the game here. So, we are on second town center. We've got that villager advantage from our Ayubit H-up. What is our position like right now? Well, we're in a situation where we have done a lot of idle time and our opponent is guaranteed to go to the castle age at some point. So what we're going to do is we're going to start scaling into archers. In the meantime, we're going to take relics and sacred sites. It's important to get the timer up and running, especially if your opponent is going to be able to defend. Now some might say, why don't you just all in? Well, I tried to explain that a little bit before, but again, it's all about playing to your advantages, which is what's the next step? And the next step for us here was the second TC. Alright, so we go for a little bit of an attack here. We just trying to probe a bit, figure out, is he still making units or is he actually going to go up? Because our opponent's still at Castle Age. It's a pretty bad situation for him, but we see that he's made a lot of units, so we're not going to waste these Gulams. We just go back We just play to our archers, get them upgraded, because the archers will counter all of the units that he has. Now, there is an upcoming timing that we're always aware of when our opponent is in the feudal age, and that is when they go castle. So when they've gone castle, then we know that they've spent 1800 resources going into the next age. And when they've done that, well, if we've been continuously making units, then we know that we're ahead. But we have not been continuously making units. We have made units, but we've also gone into second TCs. We've also been focusing on getting upgrades, getting relics. And so something we need to be really good at here is scouting. We need to understand and be aware of what our opponent's position is. We know he has a lot of weaker units. Going for something like a mangonel makes a lot of sense here. We know that if we want to build up an advantage, do more damage to his base, then that might not be running into his base because he has a lot. That could be something different. Something like doing a keep drop. I did a video recently on my YouTube channel where I tried to demonstrate again how keep drops have a sort of different impact now. And keep drops are just so strong because right now, siege, well, it's not as strong as it used to be. And so it's easy to push bases. And so a lot of the times going for keep drops, yeah, traps are good now, but that's both ways. You can stand behind a keep with a trap and then do infinite amount of damage here. So what we're doing essentially is we've gone to the next stage. We got so much of an advantage that we could go second TC. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into a keep. This keep is quite far forward, but not all the way up close to the TC. Opponent is not going into the castle age just yet. They are going to, but they aren't in it. And so this push here, right at this moment, is perfectly timed because our opponent has been making feudal age units. We've been in castle age, prepping for the moment that he's going to go castle age. The moment he goes castle age, well, that's when he's weakest because he's been spending a lot of resources not on units. If we keep on attacking with our Ghulams in the feudal age versus the feudal age opponent, and we keep that going and going and going, well, it might not turn out as well because they might be able to defend. And so now we're sort of in castle age with half the size of this army. But instead what we did was we did some attacking. We saw that he was willing to invest into defending, and then we didn't care about that investment. Instead what we did was we transitioned into more counter units. We let him spend his resources on staying longer in feudal, and then we just went castle age. And then, boom. He goes castle, it's over. Because now he's the weakest. So you can push here. Pretty simple. Again, understanding that your opponent is spending resources the same way that you are on a castle age is 1800 resources that they now have not spent on units. A keep like this is bold. You have to know when you can do it. Because if you can't do it, and you then lose your villagers, the game's over. So be careful with this. But if you do get it up, if you do manage to do a push like this, and get a lot of villager kills and potentially end the game, well, that's perfect. Because now you know that with the info that you had, that you could, what the limits are of your gameplay. If this keep was going to be denied because he got to castle earlier than I had anticipated, and I would not be able to push it into his base, well, then I might play more map control focused. Remember, I already got the sacred sites up and running. There's already 2 minutes counted off that, so 8 minutes left. I could then try to place keeps on the sacred sites, or even place keeps on golds like this, and just starve him from gold. There's a lot of things that I can do here, because I've already got the second DC. I'm already ahead. So it's about building advantages. And that's the gist of this. It's about keeping the game going, but not in a manner where it's like you keep the game going unnecessarily, but where you instead keep it going and you build something. So there it is. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't ramble too much. If there's something you'd like clarified, then check out the comment section. I'll be happy to answer questions down there. And yeah, check out the coaching. I do coaching for 40 euros an hour, so you can check that out as well. Don't be afraid to hit me up on Discord, and we can potentially negotiate something. All right, see you guys in the next one. Ciao.